Welcome to Milestone 4. Today we're going to look at the TACE compliancy assessment, and in that we're going to see how the deployment resolves some of the criteria that are specified in TACE. Now firstly we're going to discuss why it is that TACE is abstract. I'm going to recap this from one of our previous milestones just briefly. TACE is as abstract as possible so that there are as many design opportunities to implement. However, we'd like to resolve most of these before the deployment. It's very important that we don't leave it right to the last stage, the IT administrator, to resolve this, because that would put a lot of burden on the IT administrator. So we'd like to have the majority of criteria resolved in the factory at the design time criteria. There are some things, of course, that we just simply can't resolve, and that must be left to the IT administrator, and that's the assigning of devices and people and the information structure itself. So in the question 3, which is the challenging question of this milestone, you need to take a look at the resolution of TACE criteria of abstraction. And in that document, we've highlighted the criteria that we believe are the most important from a security point of view. We don't really want to take a look at everything today, just the most important ones. And I'm going to go over these briefly. Firstly, the substrate starts uncompromised. No software is installed on the substrate once it is deployed, and of course the substrate is not tampered with. Those are the first 3. Also, the substrate must remain in isolation. The loading is not defined. That's left up to the implementation. The memory must be isolated. Processes cannot affect one another. And there should be no library calls to the substrate from the agent. Those are all design time factors which we'd like to resolve in the factory. The only runtime factors that are here for analysis are storing the information in the TA process, and accessing that information is not accounted for. So just taking a look at those factors, what we want you to do in this milestone is justify how each one of these criteria will add to the risk of the deployment. Now, to understand this question fully, we need to see what the TACE security risk function really means. Now, the TACE security risk function is to do with allowing IT administrators and non-IT personnel to be able to assess price points and be able to assess the effectiveness of an IT solution. The TSR is a single number that allows companies to present a product security rating, and it can be understood by politicians or anyone without an IT background. The TSR reflects the chance that the deployment will have failure in its lifetime. So to get to the TSR, we've basically got to understand the deviation that the deployment will have from the ideal theory of a secure system. The more the deviation, further away from the ideal, the more risk there is. So what we want you to do in this milestone is just identify that risk. We don't want you to put a number on it, just identify it for each of these criteria. And to do that, you're going to need to understand the layers where this occurs. Now, the first number of criteria that are going to need to be discussed are in the source code themselves, in Bluebrick, and you will need to study some of the source code there, but we have provided a factor analysis table for you So you don't really need to understand that source code in context. You can just look at the description and understand what it's trying to do. The next group that you're going to have to look at is to do with the substrate. Now, if you take a look at this stack, you can see that this is probably what you're going to be running the system on at your university. A PC with Windows installed, and that will be supporting the VirtualBox framework. And on there's the Ubuntu operating system, the Java virtual machine, and the TACE alpha environment, and then the process. So take a look at that stack and provide an analysis of where risk is introduced in the substrate. For example, you may not have control over the machines that were installed at your university or the operating system, so you can talk about an unknown risk there. But if you did install the operating system yourself and you're pretty confident about that, you can make assumptions about that. Finally, there's some runtime analysis that you need to have a look at, which is where the code was inserted and understanding the risk introduced by allowing that library call in the event log. So it's a fairly hard question. I won't go through the other questions in that milestone. That's the challenging one, number 3. But if you can accomplish that, then you're pretty much on the way to understanding the TSR and being able to assess a deployment. Thank you very much.